And I am joined by Cambry Bayless. There is a typo on the slides that you will receive. I'm so sorry. She's only been married for how many months? And I was the matchmaker who set her up with her husband, and I still can't get her name right. So anyway, profound apologies. So for those of you who came to our office tour last year, you may notice a pattern. We are trying to do one of these annually where we will delve into the history of a different state department, and then we will work with the legislators upstairs to actually get to take you into their offices. So this one is kind of a behind the scenes sort of thing, if you will. So we will start off down here, then we will go up and take a look in the office case on the exhibit ramp, where we will talk about some of the artifacts in there that we chose to represent the Board of Health. And then we will actually go upstairs into the Capitol building itself and go up to the first floor to see this office. So this is going to be kind of a three-part thing. We are joined by our virtual friends for the first part of it, and then they get a video once we start moving. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the history of the Board of State Health, which you have probably never heard of because we don't have a Board of State Health otherwise today. Basically, we're talking about the history of what we now know as DHHS, so the Department of Health and Human Services. And this is one teeny tiny little piece of their story. We're not talking about the human services side of things as much. But like everything else, it started in state government in our capitals. So when we go back to the 1860s, actually, this is when medical professionals in Michigan start to get really interested in the collection of statistics and data. In fact, members of the Michigan Medical Society, so these are doctors, get together and they start asking state government to start to collect regular data. Now, the state's already doing some of this under the Constitution of 1850. In the 19th century, we have our national censuses that happen in 0 years, but then the state will also take a census in 4 years. So 54, 64, 74, 84, et cetera. And this work is done through the Secretary of State's office. And that's good. It gives us 2 years worth of data, but that's all we get every decade still. So the Michigan Medical Society works with the legislature, and they pass, and the governor signs, Governor Crapo signs PA 194 of 1867, which creates a registration of births, marriages, and deaths. So let's check in with people at least at 3 major milestones: when they're born. So we also, as part of this, know where they're being born and who they're being born to. Marriages, we check in at sort of this pivotal moment. This also gives us information about when women's names changes. So as we're tracking people, we get that piece of information thrown in. And we are also collecting information about when, where, and how people die. And this is, of course, at the heart of so much of this. We want to know how and why people are getting sick. Now, what's interesting is this is not necessarily just a government thing. So if you look at the legislation, you'll see we work with township officials on the births, but we actually work with clergy as well. So justices of the peace, ministers of the gospel, because they're going to be the ones who are performing marriages. So from day one, this is not just a government thing. This is government working with partners across the state to try to ascertain information. And of course, the reports they're going to be able to publish and the statistics in them are only going to be as good as the responses they get. So if you are a genealogist and you're like, oh, I didn't know about these, I can go and take a deep dive in. Well, if your county didn't report very well, sorry, you're stuck. Reports were very, very inconsistent across the state initially. But they were still better than nothing. So here we see the first annual report of the Secretary of State, because this is going to be done through the Secretary of State's office because they already have those connection points around Michigan. Now, one of the people who is very, very interested in this is an Ingham County doctor named Henry Baker. So Henry Baker grew up in Ingham County. Got his medical training through 3 avenues. First, he sort of apprenticed, as most doctors did, at the office of Lansing's Dr. Ira Bartholomew, which I think that's a picture of it. He studied for at least 1 year at the University of Michigan in the medical school, which was not a graduate program at the time. This was just undergrad courses. Anybody could swoop in and take them, and then you could leave. So remember, this is before there's like an actual licensing practice for doctors. And he also enlists in the Civil War. Ask Matt for more information about that. He's in Matt's book. And he gets thrown in hospital tents, serves as a surgeon's assistant, and sees all kinds of, gosh, awful stuff, I'm quite sure. But it does not deter him from the profession. He comes back. He actually will spend a little bit of time also training at Bellevue Hospital in New York, which was a teaching hospital then as well. And he is very, very interested in this whole movement. And he is a member of the Medical Society. And when the actual Board of State Health is created 6 years later, in 1873, he is unanimously elected their first secretary, which means he is the first full-time state employee who is dealing in health stuff per se, because the folks in the Secretary of State's office were also doing other stuff. Now, the Board of State Health is initially, they think, going to work with vital statistics. Those are still published by the Secretary of State for a while, but they're going to coordinate with them. It's going to be a 6-member board. Members will be appointed by the governor. They are largely going to be doctors. The consent of the Senate is needed, and they will hold their terms for they will serve, staggered. Thank you. They will serve staggered terms. They will also be responsible for pulling together more information. So there's an open-ended question: what can this new board do? And initially, the board's just going to meet once a month. These guys have other jobs, so they're not going to be in Lansing all the time, although there are Lansing doctors who will serve on the board, including men like George Ranney, another Civil War soldier. Talk to Matt about him if you have questions. But they will meet together and they will give Dr. Baker tasks. And Dr. Baker will also start to get a budget. And this is actually going to tick off other people in state government because they get their own budget that they get to decide how to spend. It does not have to go through the Board of State Auditors. Now, when we think about where this work is being done, it's happening in the state office block. 1873 is 2 years into construction of our current Capitol building. So there is no Capitol number 3 yet. There is no room for them in Capitol number 2. So they are working in a small office in this space right near the Secretary of State. So they have that, that proximity. And they are occasionally, mostly Baker, occasionally the board, will go over to the Capitol. It, of course, behooves them to keep in touch with the legislature and show the legislature what they are doing with the dollars and with the powers that they have. And one thing they will do is they will host various professionals for talks in the House chamber. So here we can see a diagram of the Hall of Representatives and a picture over there of Mr. Kedzie, who many of you probably know his name because he was a professor at MSU for a long time. He gave several talks, one of which was about illuminating oils. So this is one of those health things that was really big deal in the 19th century that we go, today. But basically, because there was no regulation of these things, people were selling oils that, exploded and could burn people or kill people. Because there's no oversight. So one thing that the Board of Health will work with government to do is to actually appoint an inspector of illuminating oils who will go and do tests across the state to make sure that the products being sold are what they're supposed to be and are not going to cause injury. This also speaks to the fact that from day one, the Board of Health is going to work very closely with both the agricultural school, even though they're not technically in the business of medicine. They are in the business of sort of living well, of food, of animal husbandry, which is another piece of this. We're not just talking human health, we're also talking animal health, in part as it relates to farmers and also food. This is an early attempt by the state to start thinking about food safety before there is anything like the Pure Food and Drug Act on a national level. There's also going to be a lot of cooperation with the University of Michigan. In fact, the first state lab will be in coordination with U of M down at their campus. You'll hear much more about labs later on. Now, because the Board of Health is created in 1873, it does not appear on the original floor plans. Elijah Myers did not know to shoehorn them in somewhere. So they are part of what I have come to think of as the West Wing dance. So if you came last year for the Superintendent of Public Instruction, you remember they are also in the West Wing. We'll be just across the hallway tonight. So the Superintendent of Public Instruction and the Agriculture folks were supposed to be initially on the south side of the West Wing. Well, the Superintendent of Public Instruction actually gets the suite on the north side of the West Wing, where the state geologist is here. The state geologist never gets a room or a museum in the Capitol, in part because he is also on faculty at U of M. So they say, he's got space down there, good enough. So what was going to be the Agriculture Department actually becomes the Board of Health. So Baker and his slowly growing team of clerks have, I believe, 2 rooms. And it is important that they have windows with a southern exposure. We'll talk about why a little bit later on. Those other 2 rooms that are right next to them, that on the plan say Superintendent of Public Instruction, those actually ended up being used by the Railroad Commission. And eventually the Board of Health tried to bump the Railroad Commission out. So once again, when it comes to space in the Capitol, there is always a lot of push and pull, to put it very politely. So by the time they move into the new Capitol and settle in, they are not quite a decade old yet. This is the first report they would have issued based on their work in that building. And if you look through the contents, you can see things like illuminating oils. They're looking at sanitary issues, waste, epidemics. In fact, if we put together sort of a list of priorities based on those early reports, this gives you a sense of what they're dealing with. So lots of things, all different types of communicable diseases, water supply, the creation of sewage systems. Remember, this is when most people have a well and an outhouse. We're talking about food, drinks. We're talking about climate, topography, geology, drainage, ventilation, poisons, school hygiene, sanitary inspections in cities and villages, statistics about mortality and sickness, public health legislation, finances, animal diseases, preventable sickness, the relation between that and taxation. So of course, money comes into everything, government does. And also issues of quarantine. So do we have the power as the government? Can we work with county officials, local officials to quarantine people? And that can also happen at the state border. So there's a lot of different things happening. And the staff grows pretty quickly by the mid 1880s. So the board is now about 12 years old. You can see there's about a dozen people who are going to be working in those 2 rooms with Dr. Baker. And again, they are just the capital end of this operation. They are going to be working with people in townships and counties all over the state. You will also notice, as best we can tell, because there's a few sort of anonymous initials there that it's hard to gender, I think this department had largely male staff for quite a while. It took them possibly into the 20th century to hire women. And I'm not sure all of the reasons why behind that. That could have been a Baker thing. I don't know. He would have been in charge of hiring staff. So this is one of the more male-centric departments. And we do know a little bit about some of their clerks, including Arnold Clark. So Arnold Clark was an only child, the son of a widow who doted upon her son, homeschooled the kid until he went to Albion College. He was apparently quite bright, was a very erstwhile moral reformer. As a teenager, started giving temperance talks because, you know, teenagers like to do that. And he ends up getting himself a job at the Capitol. And Baker very quickly comes to realize, hey, this kid's talented. I can trust him, because Baker is also the mouthpiece of the department. So he's trying to be everywhere and do everything. So he kind of deputizes Arnold. He doesn't officially have a deputy secretary, but Arnold basically becomes it. And he works up all of these prepared talks, and he basically hits the county health circuit. So they're trying to get together county health associations. They're trying to have at least an annual conference in each county for local doctors and medical professionals to get together with office holders, and he is going around and he is speaking at them, giving talks like the prevention of consumption and the germ army, how it may be routed. And some of these things were published, actually. Here we can see part of their reports at this point in time include lists of the publications that were in their office library. So in those 2 rooms where 24 people work, they are also pulling together health reports and information from medical journals. And, you know, you'll recognize, I mean, the Lancet, these are big deals. So they are really trying to communicate with the medical community beyond Michigan. And we see this in that both Baker and Clark will attend national conferences. Clark actually spoke at a conference in Pennsylvania, and Baker would go on to actually interact with the international community and would be honored by fellow associations as far away as France. Somehow, Arnold Clark found spare time to also write a novel called Beneath the Dome. It is not the most riveting read in the world, if I'm going to be honest. It is very erstwhile, like he was. And it's interestingly not about health. It is very much, though, written in the progressive spirit. So remember, this is the big P progressive era. We're thinking about how government can do more for more people, make our lives better, make the world safer. And this novel deals particularly with land use, and he argues for more access to land, basically, for average people. And of course, as with any capital drama, there's a riveting scene where, you know, the good guys come in and defeat the evil lobbyists who are about to, you know, twist the arms of the legislators and get them to adopt this really, really bad bill that's going to destroy everything. So, like I said, not the best read in the world, not widely available. We have copies. The Library of Michigan has copies. I think there's one copy at the Albion College Library. It was published posthumously, actually. So his mother basically took the manuscript and hired someone to sort of edit and fix it up a little bit. I love the fact that there is a fair bit of newspaper coverage about it in Lansing when it comes out. And the newspaper is basically like, yeah, everybody wants to get their hands on a copy to see if they can recognize themselves or their boss in this. So I'm sure it was very well read, at least in Lansing. With that, we are going to move on. But first, while we're here sitting, any questions? I know we've just gone through something really complicated in really brief fashion. Karen. Where was that state block building? So that state block building was the block where the Masonic Temple is today, or the Farnham building, or many other iterations of things. The Senate, Big B, some people would know it as. So it's just kitty corner. So it's the same block as the second Capitol, actually. It was built on the corner, whereas the Capitol kind of sat in the middle of a big green space there. And that building existed in altered form into 22, 23, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there. I think it's 26.
Oh, okay.
Because they have to move people out of it and into
the other state office building, meaning Cass / Elliott Larson.
Yeah, before they can carry
So sometime in the 20s, that building goes away.
That's a couple more years.
And there was talk briefly about Lansing's going to build a skyscraper there. Didn't happen. He did. He actually died of one of the diseases that he routinely talked about and warned people about. He went down south to convalesce in warm weather for a while. That didn't work. And when he died, he was very publicly mourned. A lot of people knew who he was. He was like 30 something at the time. And so he had, certainly gained a following. And it's interesting to think, had he lived to publish his book, how he may have been able to promote it. And if he would have pursued a career as a writer. He did eventually leave state service because it didn't pay very well. And he actually taught at an MSU briefly. He was an English teacher. Right? I think it was tuberculosis. Yeah. Sure. Which of course killed a lot of people. Any other questions? All right. Well, for those of you who joined us virtually, thank you very much. There will be a link in the comments to the video that will share the rest of this experience with you. And for everyone who's here in person, we're going to have you pick up a packet up here, and then we're going to take a walk.